Reading the lives of the saints is a big part of any trad upbringing, probably any Catholic upbringing, trad or otherwise. I loved reading those tan books, The Lives of the Saints. This book here is essentially the reason why John Vianney is my confirmation name. And The Lives of the Saints, those stories are still near and dear to my heart, though not exactly in the same way that they were when I was a Catholic. I think that having these saints to look up to almost as heroes is what cemented my love for comic books and for fantasy novels once I was a little bit older. And I still love reading. So you can imagine my excitement when I saw that the Avoiding Babylon team did a video on the Golden Legend. The Golden Legend is a collection of stories about the lives of the saints. It was one of the most widely read books in all of Middle Ages Europe, being printed in Latin and then in many other languages, including being one of the first books to be printed into English. But the conversation about the Golden Legend started on Avoiding Babylon when they had Michael Hitchborn of the Lepanto Institute on their show. The Avoiding Babylon team received a super chat asking for recommendations on, quote, any good resources for beginners to explain these deep traditions of the church, and Hitchborn responded as follows.
I would also recommend, if you can get through the archaic language, is the Golden Legend. It's one of my favorite things to read. Mm-hmm. It's got some amazing stories of the lives of the saints. Now it's called the Golden Legend because these are unconfirmed in terms of we have oral tradition with regard to these accounts, but you don't really have a whole lot written down. But they are stories of the lives of the saints, and they are historical accounts of things that happen in the lives of the saints that are just absolutely amazing. And you can learn a whole lot about the faith just by reading about what these saints endured, what they went through, and what their lives represent. I highly recommend the Golden Legend.
Then a few days later, the Avoiding Babylon team did a stream titled The Golden Legend, a Brothers Grimm telling of the lives of the saints. In this stream, Anthony says that he is about 3 chapters deep, and something that stuck out to him is that he used to spend a lot of time teaching his kids apologetics, but it actually would have been better for him to just read the lives of the saints to his kids. He then goes on to talk about what is so amazing about the Golden Legend.
What it is with this book that I found so amazing is that, first off, the first chapter is on the advent of the Lord, right? And it's loaded with church fathers and like Pope Gregory, and it's just little quotes about the first advent of the Lord and the second coming. And just it's packed with all these church fathers quotes, and I'm just like, holy cow, this is amazing. But when I get to St. Andrew the Apostle, first off, I didn't know how St. Andrew died. St. Andrew was crucified. I didn't know that.
Crucified on St. Andrew's cross.
Yeah, X-shaped cross.
So I've seen that symbol 1,000 times.
Yep.
But because people don't understand that crucifixion wasn't...
And by the way, that's all that they talked about the Golden Legend in this 53-minute long stream. They quickly moved on to other topics. As a heads up, I did reach out to the Avoiding Babylon team 4 times over the past 4 weeks with no response. I would have loved to actually talk to them about this instead of just doing a video like this where they don't have the opportunity to respond in real time or anything like that. But based on their recent tweets, I don't think that they're very interested in talking to me, but oh well, I tried. But this video is my excuse to talk about legend and myth in Catholicism and to respond to 2 claims that were made on Avoiding Babylon. First, Michael Hitchborn's claim that the Golden Legend is a collection of historical accounts.
They are stories of the lives of the saints, and they are historical accounts.
And then second, Anthony Abate's claim that the Golden Legend contains a story about St. Andrew being crucified on a St. Andrew's cross.
St. Andrew was crucified. I didn't know that.
Crucified on a St. Andrew's cross.
Then I'm going to talk a little bit about why I think it's worth talking about the Golden Legend in the first place, and the implications that the legends in the Golden Legend might have, the epistemological implications that it might have for Catholicism and for tradition. Let's jump in. We will start by taking a look at the Golden Legend's table of contents. So here we have the Golden Legend. You'll see that the author is Jacobus de Voragine. I have no idea if that's how it's pronounced, but he is the Middle Ages author. He's the guy who kind of put the book together. So he's like 13th century. He's been dead for almost 1,000 years. The edition that I have is published in volumes Anthony was talking about chapters, not volumes, which makes me think that he perhaps has a different version than I do. But you'll see here volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, so on and so forth. In volume 1, you'll see that it starts with right here, the advent of our Lord. I think that's what Anthony was talking about with the advent. But then he jumps ahead to talk about St. Andrew. And St. Andrew is in volume 2, and it's actually chapter 9 of volume 2. The first thing that I want to address in this video is the claim that Anthony made about St. Andrew being nailed to a St. Andrew's cross in the Golden Legend. Let's read the section in the Golden Legend in the chapter in volume 2, chapter 9, about where St. Andrew is crucified. So down here at the bottom of the page, you can see my highlights. There's this king named Agis, and Agis is quite mad at Andrew. So then he, King Agis, being all angry, commanded that he, St. Andrew, should be enclosed in prison. And on the morn he came to judgment, and the blessed St. Andrew unto the sacrifice of the idols. And Agis commanded to be said to him, if thou obey me not, I shall do hang thee on the cross, for so much thou hast praised it. So he's saying to St. Andrew, I'm going to crucify you because you don't shut up about the cross. And when St. Andrew was led to the cross, there ran much people fit. And when he saw the cross from afar, he saluted it. And he says, so St. Andrew is saying to the cross, all hail, cross, which are dedicated to in the body of Jesus Christ, who was adorned with the members of him as of precious stones. 2:4 that our Lord ascended on thee. Thou wert the power earthly, now thou art the love of heaven. So the cross used to be this earthly symbol of like power, and it struck fear into people's hearts. But now the cross is a symbol of heaven, and heaven loves the cross because of what the cross allowed heaven to accomplish. You're picking up what St. Andrew's putting down, I'm sure. Thou shalt receive me by my desire. I want to be crucified, says St. Andrew. I come to thee surely and gladly. Talking to the cross here, comes to the cross surely and gladly, so that thou receive me gladly as a disciple of him that hung on thee, as a disciple of Jesus. For I have always worshipped thee and desired thee to embrace, O thou cross, which has received beauty and nobleness of the members of our Lord, whom I have so long desired and curiously loved, and whom my courage hath so much desired and coveted. Take me from hence, and yield me to my master, to the end that he may receive me by thee. So St. Andrew is saying, he's looking at the cross and he salutes it and he says, yes, this is the vehicle that is going to take me to Jesus. So he's excited by it. And in thus saying, he, St. Andrew, unclad himself. So he gave his clothes to the butchers, and they hung him on the cross, like as to them was commanded. And there he lived 2 days. So St. Andrew lived for 2 days, and he preached to 20,000 men that were there. No mention of the St. Andrew's cross, right? So he's put on the cross. In fact, St. Andrew recognizes it as the same kind of cross that they crucified Jesus on. So, and just no mention at all of being in an X shape or anything like that. And then St. Andrew's on the cross for 2 full days, and he's preaching to 20,000 people. And then the company, so the people that were there, they swore to the death of King Agis, and they said, this holy man, this holy and debonair man ought not to suffer like this. Then came thither Agis to take him down off the cross. So King Agis, after 2 days, was like, oh man, these crowds are getting real angry at me for crucifying such a holy and debonair man. And when St. Andrew saw King Agis coming, he said, wherefore art thou come to me, Agis? If it be for penance, thou shalt have it. And if it be for to take me down, know thou for certain that thou shalt not take me hereof alive. For I see now my Lord and King that abideth for me. Therewith they should have no. And then so this part is interesting, and like you heard Hitchborn talk about the kind of old language that makes it hard to read. There's no quotations or anything because there were no quotations in Latin when this was written. But this part is interesting. So then the soldiers would have unbound him, but they couldn't touch him, for their arms had no power. So, like, the soldiers tried to take St. Andrew off the cross, but some supernatural power was preventing them from taking it off the cross. Then St. Andrew says this long prayer, and then when he's done with that prayer, so when St. Andrew had finished this prayer, there came from a light from heaven, a great shining light, which environed him by the space of half an hour, in such ways that no man might see him. So St. Andrew says this prayer, and then a light from heaven comes down and envelops him for 30 minutes, such that nobody could see him. And when this light departed, he yielded. St. Andrew yielded and rendered therewith his spirit. So this light comes, it obscures St. Andrew for 30 minutes. When the light disappears, Andrew dies. And Maximilla, the wife of King Aegis, took away the body of the disciple and buried it honorably. And ere that Aegis was come again to his house, he was ravished with a devil by the way, and died to for them all. So Aegis was on his way home after St. Andrew died, and on his way home, he gets intercepted by a devil who ravishes him, and then he dies kind of like in the street, like in public, before everybody. And that's a great story for sure. But there was no mention of the cross being an X, a St. Andrew's cross. In fact, the St. Andrew's cross thing is like a much later legend. Let me quote from a 1984 article titled The Iconography of the St. Andrew Auckland Cross. This is page 554, note 12. The tradition according to which this saint was crucified on a decusate cross, and that's the X cross, is not found in early hagiography. Depictions of St. Andrew being crucified in this manner first appear in the 10th century, but do not become standard before the 17th century. And keep in mind that the Golden Legend is a product of the 13th century. And it makes sense that the story found in the Golden Legend does not mention the X-shaped cross, because the story in the Golden Legend seemed to be ripped almost exactly from the apocryphal Acts of Andrew, which was written probably in the 2nd century. So like not long after like 2nd Peter was written, not long after even probably like Luke and Acts and John were written, not like so long after that, like decades after. The Acts of Andrew likewise does not mention an X-shaped cross, but otherwise it is very similar. Like King Aegis, instead of being killed by devils, he's consumed by grief, and so he throws himself from like a cliff. So like little details like that are different, but the story itself is very, very similar. So that settles that. The Golden Legend does not have St. Andrew being crucified on a St. Andrew's cross. It seems to be a normal Latin cross, one that St. Andrew recognizes as the same kind of cross that Jesus was crucified on, although that kind of cross is never even specified. Like St. Andrew never says like, oh, this is shaped like a T or anything. No, but it's also never said that it's shaped like an X. And if you just, a plain reading to me suggests that it's, a typical T or cross-shaped crucifix. But somehow it became a pretty common belief that St. Andrew was crucified on an X-shaped cross. I mean, it's common enough that, like, if you asked me, when I was still Catholic, how did St. Andrew die? I probably would have said he was crucified, but not on a, like, regular cross, because he didn't want to be crucified. Like, he didn't think he was worthy to die in the same way. So he chose, like, an X-shaped cross. I would have said that. Apparently, Anthony read that into the Golden Legend, even though it's not actually in the Golden Legend. So it seems like it's almost like ubiquitous across trad culture that St. Andrew was crucified on this X-shaped cross. How? It's not in the sources, right? It's not in any of the earliest sources. And it's not even in a whole lot of the later sources. How is this possible that the tradition about St. Andrew being crucified on an X-shaped cross could be so seemingly wrong? I mean, it's almost as if false stories can be told over and over and over and over until everyone believes them without even really knowing why. We're going to return to that at the end of this video because we have a lot more to talk about in the Golden Legend. The Golden Legend not mentioning an X-shaped cross is by far the most normal thing that we are going to read in the Golden Legend. It is all downhill, or maybe uphill, depending on if you like weird stories from legends like this, medieval legends. Maybe it's uphill, but we don't even need to leave the entry on St. Andrew. Earlier in that same entry on St. Andrew kills a woman with thunder? A young Christian man said to St. Andrew, My mother saw that I was fair, that I was good looking, and required for me to do sin with her. And when I would not consent to her in any manner, she went to the judge and would return and lay to me the sin of so great a felony. She would accuse me of a felony. So this young Christian man says to St. Andrew, "Pray for me that I do not die so untruly. For when I shall be accused, I shall hold my peace and not speak one word. I would rather die than defame and slander my own mother so foully." And thus he, the young Christian man, he came to judgment, and his mother accused him, saying that this young man would have defouled her. And when the young Christian man was asked of it, "Is it as your mother says?" he answered nothing. He didn't speak. Then St. Andrew said to her, the mother, "Thou art most cruel of all women, for which the accomplishment of thy lechery wilt make thy son to die." So your lying here is going to kill your son. Then the mother said to the provost, "Sir, sith that my son came and accompanied with this man, he would have done his will with me, but I withstood him that he might not." So now the mother is saying, like, oh yeah, like St. Andrew was in on this. St. Andrew and my son both wanted to, sin with me against my will. And anon, and right away, the provost and the judge commanded that the son should be put in a sack anointed with glue and then thrown into the river, and St. Andrew should be put in prison till he was advised how he should best torture him. So the son is going to be killed by drowning. He's going to be put in a sack. The sack's going to be glued shut, and he's going to be thrown into a river, and St. Andrew is going to be thrown in jail and tortured. But St. Andrew made his prayer to God, and anon, right away, came a horrible thunder, which feared them all, and made the earth tremble strongly, and the woman was smitten with the thunder unto the death. And the other prayed the apostle that they might not perish, and he prayed for them, and the tempest ceased. Thus then the provost believed in God and all of his meany, and all of it, like they believed in God and God's peoples, God's group. So probably referring that like St. Andrew really is a member of God's troop. So St. Andrew goes full Thor. St. Andrew Odin's son prays and calls down thunder. Now the word for thunder in Latin, it might be the same word for lightning, because she was smitten with thunder doesn't make a lot of sense, but she was smitten with lightning does. So perhaps it's talking about lightning. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, does this sound like a historical account of things that happened in the lives of the saints, as Michael Hitchborn said? Keep in mind that Andrew would have died in the mid-1st century, around the 60s, according to legend. The Golden Legend was written in the 13th century and rarely cites its sources. It certainly doesn't here. To me, the Golden Legend sounds, well, legendary, mythical, not historical. Let's read 2 more examples of stories from the Golden Legend that I think are self-evidently mythical, not historical. And I will literally limit myself only to the following 2 entries in the Golden Legend. I promise you, I'm literally only reading the life of St. Andrew and then St. Nicholas and then the Blessed Virgin Mary, because those are volume 2, chapter 9, 10, and 11. If we kept reading, I'm sure that we would continue to find crazy stuff that is clearly myth and legend, not historical accounts, but I am limiting myself to only volume 2, chapters 9, 10, and 11. We just did chapter 9, the life of St. Andrew, so let's move on to chapter 10 in volume 2, the life of St. Nicholas. So if you look in the table of contents on the life, you see that volume 2, chapter 9 is the life of St. Andrew, and then chapter 10, here beginneth the life of St. Nicholas the Bishop. The entry on St. Nicholas gets pretty weird, pretty quick. Let me read from really the first paragraph, because everything seems just to begin with like an etymology of the name. So then here's the paragraph where begins the life of St. Nicholas. Nicholas, citizen of the city of Patras, was born of rich and holy kin. His father was Epiphanes and his mother Johanne. He was begotten in the first flower of their age, And from that time forth on, they lived in continence and led a heavenly life. I had to look up the original Latin word used there, translated in this edition as continence. And the exact phrase is celibem vitam duxerunt. They led a celibate life. So St. Nicholas was begotten in the first flower of their age. And then after that, they lived celibate lives. To me, that sounds like they got together exactly one time. They conceived St. Nicholas, and then they never got together again. They fulfilled their marital vows once. They had St. Nicholas, and then they never fulfilled their marital vows again after that. They got pregnant from the one time, and then that was it. Then the first day that he was washed and baned, I had to look up that word too. That just means it's like another word for washed. He addressed him right up in the basin. That means that St. Nicholas stood from the first time that they washed him. So they went to go wash him in like the sink or whatever, and St. Nicholas stood up. Keep in mind, this baby would have been like a day or two old or whatever, and they're going to wash him, and he's standing. And he would not take the breast nor the pap, but once on the Wednesday and once on the Friday. So St. Nicholas, even as an infant, was fasting. He would only take the breast once on Wednesdays and once on Fridays, and otherwise not at all. There are more weird stories about St. Nicholas. And here's where I said the Golden Legend doesn't normally cite its sources, but here it is read in a chronicle that the Blessed Nicholas was at the Council of Nice, and on a day as a ship with mariners were perishing in the sea, they prayed devoutly that St. Nicholas, the service of God, so they were saying, if those things that we have heard of thee said be true, prove it now. And at once a man appeared in St. Nicholas's likeness and said, Lo, see ye me not? Ye called me. And then he began to help them in their exploit of the sea. And anon the tempest ceased. So they pray to St. Nicholas, who is, by the way, like still alive and all that. And St. Nicholas like bilocates over to them, and he helps them with the sea. And then the tempest stopped. And when they came to his church, they knew him without any man to show him to them, and yet they had never seen him. And then they thanked God and him of their deliverance, and he bade them to attribute it to the mercy of God and to their belief, and nothing to his merits. So very humble, but he did indeed bilocate to save these sailors. And then there's another weird story right after that. It was so on a time that all the provinces of St. Nicholas suffered a great famine in such ways that victual failed. So food was failing, and there was a great famine. And then this holy man heard say that certain ships laden with wheat were arrived in the haven. And right away he went thither and prayed the mariners that they would succor the parish at least with 100, units of wheat from every ship. But they said, Father, we dare not, for it is metered out, and we must give reckoning thereof in the garners of the emperor in Alexandria. So St. Nicholas says, please, my people are starving. Won't you give them some of the wheat of your ships? And the sailors are saying, we can't, sorry. It was measured at the port that we departed from, and it's going to be measured when we land. And if we don't give it to the emperor of Alexandria, the emperor is going to have some pretty stern words for us. But the holy man, St. Nicholas, said to them, do this that I have said to you, and I promise in the truth of God that it shall not be less or minished when ye shall come to the garners. And when they had delivered so much out of every ship, they came into Alexandria and delivered the measure that they had received. And then they recounted the miracle to the ministers of the emperor, and worshipped and prayed strongly in his servant Nicholas. Then this holy man distributed the wheat to every man after that he had needed, in such ways that it sufficed for 2 years, not only to sell, but also to sow. So St. Nicholas was able to miraculously multiply containers of wheat during a famine, so much so that they had a ton left over, even enough for them to sow. Sounds a lot like the miracle of the loaves and the fishes, right? Does this sound like a historical account? Does any of the entry of St. Nicholas sound like a historical account? Or does it sound legendary to you? I will let you be the judge. But let's do one more example from the Golden Legend before we wrap up. And oddly, the next chapter after St. Nicholas is a chapter on the Blessed Virgin Mary. So in Volume 2, Chapter 11, on the Blessed Virgin Mary, there is this really weird story at the end. It's a shorter chapter, but the actual, you can read this. Go ahead and pause the screen and read if you so desire. But it starts a little bit with the story of the Blessed Virgin Mary, but then it mostly just goes into stories about the Blessed Virgin Mary that come from hundreds of years after the life of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So this is not like a historical account. This is recounting legends about Marian apparitions, pretty much. But take a look at this really, really odd story that seems to portray Our Lady as some kind of jealous lover. Let me read it to you. So, in the time of Charlemagne, King of France, there was a clerk who was brother germain to the King of Hungary, and this clerk loved heartily the Blessed Virgin Mary and said he did prayers to the Blessed Virgin Mary every day. It happened that, by the counsel of his friends, he took in marriage a very fair damsel. And when he had wedded her, and the priest had given benediction on them after the Mass, right away he remembered that day that he had not prayed to Our Lady. So this clerk sent home his bride, his wife, and all of his people to his house. But he stayed in the church beside the altar to pray to Our Lady. And when he came to this anthem, that is the part where he says, "Thou art fair and gracious, daughter of Jerusalem," anon, right away, appeared to him the glorious Virgin Mary with two angels on either side. And the Virgin Mary said to him, "I am fair and gracious. Wherefore leavest thou me and takest thou another wife? And where hast thou seen one more fair than I am?" What? Our Lady is jealous that he took himself a wife? And she says, is your wife more pretty than I am? And the clerk answers, "My lady, your beauty surmounteth all the beauty of the world. Thou art lifted up above the heavens and above the angels. What wilt thou that I do?" And Our Lady answered him and said, "If thou wilt leave thy wife fleshly, thou shalt have me thine spouse in the realm of heaven. And if thou wilt hallow the feast of my conception, the 8th day of December, and preach it about that it may be hallowed, thou shalt be crowned in the realm of heaven." And right away therewith, our Blessed Lady vanished away. So Our Lady appears to some guy right after his wedding and is all offended that he married somebody. And she's like, "Is she prettier than I am?" And then he's like, "What should I do?" And she's like, "Leave your wife for me and I'll be your wife in heaven." First, what? Like, Our Lady is not going to be anybody's wife in heaven, much less some clerk of some French clerk in the time of Charlemagne. And then she also says, "And by the way, please make holy December 8th. I'd like that to be the feast day of the Immaculate Conception." I don't think that I need to talk too long about the problems that this poses for Orthodox Catholic understandings of who Our Lady is, right? Our Lady is literally acting like a jealous ex-lover and then tells him to leave his wife on the day that he made his wedding vows. "Until death do I part?" Just kidding. Only until after the ceremony, Our Lady appears to me and tells me that I need to leave you. I mean, maybe vows were different back then, and maybe they didn't say "until death do we part," but like, wow, what a bizarre story. And I just said what a bizarre story, but here's the thing. The more that I read ancient texts like the Golden Legend, the less bizarre that I find stuff like this. Which brings me to the part of the video that I mentioned we would get to eventually, the epistemological implications of all of this. I think that most Christians are going to want to reject, at the very least, that story about Mary telling us to leave his wife for her. Most Christians also probably reject the stuff about St. Nicholas like standing and fasting as an infant and St. Andrew killing a woman, like Thor, Andrew Odin's son. But so what, you might ask? So what? We reject a book of legends from the Middle Ages. And that is a fair question. But I think that it matters to the Catholic Christian. Catholic Christians make a big deal about oral tradition, which supposedly has been able to carry apostolic teaching down through the ages, such that the Pope today could declare that some doctrine is apostolic in origin, even if there is no evidence of this certain doctrine being taught during the apostolic era, right? We've seen this with various Marian devotions that are simply not present during the apostolic era, but kind of popped up during the 3rd and 4th and 5th centuries. And then in the 19th century, the 20th century, the 21st century, these doctrines are declared as being apostolic, despite the fact that there is no evidence. And then the claim is just like, oh yeah, like, well, this was definitely an oral tradition that originated with the apostles, because how else would it have gotten to, to the people in the 3rd and 4th and 5th centuries? Well, I don't think that there being some kind of oral tradition is evidence at all that this oral tradition must have come from the apostles, right? I mean, take a look at these crazy stories that we just read in the Golden Legend. I don't doubt for a second that the Jacobus, the author of this text, was basing his story off of older traditions, be they oral or written. I'm sure that he was. I don't think that he was making up anything whole cloth. But the jump from we probably have oral traditions about these legends to these legends are historical accounts. And remember what Michael Hitchborn of the Lepanto Institute said.
They are stories of the lives of the saints, and they are historical accounts.
I think that jump from oral tradition to historical accounts is it's really spurious. Or worse than spurious, it seems apologetic to me. As in, wow, wouldn't it be neat if these stories were true? So I'm just going to say that, like, yeah, these are totally oral tradition, man. Like, this totally works. Wanting it to be true is enough reason for me to justify believing in these texts, despite the fact that they really appear just to be myth and legend and nothing more. At the start of this video, I talked about how I still appreciate the lives of the saints. When we were talking about the entry on St. Nicholas, I skipped the part in the story where St. Nicholas throws bags of gold into his neighbor's house in order to save his neighbor's daughters from having to sell their bodies in order to afford food and stuff like that. What an awesome story. What a good role model for us to live up to. St. Nick was generous and selfless, giving away his riches in order to help poor people. I mean, what a great story. Does it matter if St. Nicholas really did throw those bags of gold into his neighbor's house? Does it matter? I don't think so. Does it matter if Rand al'Thor really did cleanse the source? Does it matter if Vin Venture was really so connected to preservation that she could burn the mist itself? Does it matter if Kaladin Stormblessed really did jump into that arena unarmored to protect his friends when they were outnumbered? No. It never matters if it actually happened in stories like this. Stories can be inspiring even if those stories are fictional. But then there's this phenomenon where billions of people across the globe who want to take rights away from people justify taking rights away from people based on these legends and myth. Whether it's religious fanatics in the Near East who want to take rights away from women, or religious fanatics in the United States who want to take rights away from LGBT people, beliefs in these legends and myths have been inspiring people to take rights away from other people for as long as there have been legends and myths, which has been going on for as long as there have been humans on this planet. And this is a massive global problem. Myths can inspire you, and that is all well and good. But when you want to use your myth to take rights away from people, then you better be damn sure that your myth is more than just myth. And in my experience, the vast majority of people are not nearly well educated enough on their own myths to justify their attempt at stripping others of their rights. The Avoiding Babylon team is certainly not, and they won't even engage with high-effort critiques like the kinds that I present on my channel. And obviously, nobody need engage with my content. But if you're the kind of person who won't engage with high effort, anti-apologetic content like mine, and you advocate stripping rights from other people, then I think you're just the worst kind of person, and I'm glad the demographic collapse of conservative religion is continuing to cause people like you to become more and more rare. Thanks for watching.